Hey everyone! Today I'm going to show you how to make a messenger bag that could also just be a basic bag or purse for your stuffed animal. It really opens so you can hold whatever you want in it, and it's really easy to make, so let's get started. Okay, so I'm going to be making this out of some tan felt. Using felt reduces the number of steps needed since it doesn't fray, but you could always use regular fabric or a more durable kind that might be used for actual bags. I also have the patterns I drew, so I'll link those down below. But the length of the strap is up to you. I made mine really long since I wanted it to be a crossbody, and I made it to fit Roxy, who is a pretty unique shape. Now I'm going to start cutting out all my pieces. I'm going to pin this main one to the felt and cut it out. I only need one of this. But for that smaller piece, that's going to be the side of the bag, so I need two of these. So I'm going to fold over my felt first, and then I can cut out two at a time. And for the strap, I'm breaking out my rotary cutter and mat since I want a really straight line, and clearly I didn't do a great job making a straight line with the pattern. So I'm just laying my ruler on top first to help me cut it. And since my strap is really long and my felt isn't very big, I need to cut out two of these and sew them together, so I'm cutting out a second one. And to attach them together, I'm laying them good side to good side and sewing a straight line across the ends. After that, it should look like this. And I'm going to be extra neat this time and open up that extra fabric flat against whatever side it's on, and sew straight down on both those edges so the extra fabric isn't sticking out. And after that, it should look like this, very flat on both sides. Now I still haven't cut this to the exact length I want, so that's what I'm doing now. Now I'm going to grab the main piece and flip it good side up, but with felt it doesn't really matter. And I'm going to take the side piece, and as you can see, one end is wider than the other. So I'm going to take the more narrow side and line that up with the straight edge of the main piece, not the rounded edge. And now I'm just going to pin these two pieces together, good side to good side, along the edges. But I'm not going all the way around to that top edge, so the bag is still open. Now I'm going to use a straight stitch to sew right along where I've pinned. This can be a little tricky, but I'm going to give some tips when doing the other side. After that, it'll look like this, and now I'm going to do the same thing for the other side, lining up the thinner edge of the side with the top of the bag. And when sewing this, make sure to stop a few millimeters away from the corner so you can rotate the whole thing and go to the other side. And don't worry if it's not perfect, it probably will look fine from the outside. I just like to quickly turn it inside out to check that there aren't any holes. After sewing the other side, the bag is basically fully formed and I can turn this inside out. And now I can grab my strap and pin it on. I'm making sure the clean side of the strap is facing out. And instead of just putting it straight in there, I'm going to make it kind of come out diagonally, just because I felt that way it would lay the most naturally on my stuffed animal. But I'm basically having the strap kind of point away from the front of the bag, so if you looked inside, the extra fabric from the strap would end up being a triangle. And now I'm actually going to sew this on by hand because I don't have a thread that matches this color completely, so I was afraid that if I used the sewing machine and messed up the stitches a little, it would be really obvious. So I'm just going to do a few stitches by hand to make things really neat. I'm going to be using a back stitch for this, and to do that I just make a basic stitch by pulling my needle through. Then I'm going to insert my needle a little bit ahead of that stitch, pull it through, then insert it back in at the start of that previous stitch. And then you can just repeat that with the next one, inserting it ahead of your stitch, then going back to close it. And once I've sewn all the way across the width of the strap, I can go back to the inside and lock my stitch by inserting my needle through one of the stitches, then pulling it through the loop that forms and doing that twice. And now I can trim off the extra and do the same thing for the other side of the strap. After that, it's looking pretty good, but there's still a few more details to add to close the bag. This design was kind of inspired by these frog plushies from Amazon that carry this little satchel. So I wanted to add those little straps as well, so I'm just cutting them out right now based off of how big my bag is. I'll also add this as a pattern though. And once I have an idea where I'm going to place them, I'm going to sew these on again by hand, using the same back stitch as before. I'll admit, once I finished this, I realized I put them a little bit too close together because I feel like messenger bags have straps or buckles further apart from each other. So here I am sewing this on using really tiny stitches, so I must have been pretty patient the day I filmed this. And after sewing all the way across, I'm not going to cut off my thread, I'm just going to go straight into the next one, and sew straight across that one as well. Now pretty much the last thing to do is add the buttons, but I first need to cut the buttonholes. So I'm just taking the end of the strap and folding it over and making a small cut, And then I'm just checking to make sure the button passes through, and if it does, there's no need to cut it bigger. So now I can just cut the other hole. Now to make sure I put the buttons in the right place, I'm going to pull down the straps where I want them to lay and put a pin through the buttonhole I've cut. That way when you remove the straps, you'll have the pins marking where you need to put the buttons. So I'm just inserting my needle through the back really close to that pin and adding my button through there. And this button only has 2 holes, so I'm just going to go back and forth through the 2 holes, probably at least 10 times till it's secure. And of course I just remove the pin once I already have the position down. Then I can lock my stitch and repeat the same thing for the other button. After that, here's how it looked. I'm going to test it out by pulling the buttons through just to make sure everything's working. And a great thing about using felt is you don't have to deal with any of the buttonhole stitching that is required when you're using other fabrics, which is something I haven't mastered and always seem to mess up, which it might be my sewing machine, but I'm really glad I didn't have to do that this time. And before I made this, I actually meant for the sides to kind of tuck in, like the no-sew backpack I made in a previous video. But because of the sewn-on strap, it was a little too thick at the top to fold, so the sides kind of stick out and you see them from the front, which I think also looks fine. Now, I mentioned I had a plan for how to shorten the strap, or maybe I haven't mentioned it at all, but what I did was kind of tuck in the strap into the side of the bag and use a safety pin to hold it in place. But I later realized it might have been better if I had just taken the middle of the strap, which is the part in the back that you probably won't see, and just kind of pinched it together in the back so the strap would be shorter. But the technique I actually ended up using for filming the intro was tucking the strap in on both sides and then just closing the bag, no safety pin. And that seems to hold it pretty well, so if you see the shots of the dog in the intro where the bag looks really short, that is the way I was able to shorten it. And I also turned the bag the other way to show that it could look like a normal bag or purse if you just turn it around. Now that's pretty much it for this video. I've also included some videos from my trip to Stanford, and I don't go there, by the way, it was just for my cousin's graduation. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a like, comment any video suggestions you have, and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I'll see you next time!